And welcome, everybody, to the first inaugural edition of Maroon Mega Media's Aggie Scouting Report. I am Chris Landry, and we're excited to have you today. We're excited to be on this venture. I hope some of you have caught us on Twitter Spaces. But if you haven't, this is part of what we're going to be doing on a regular basis here. Twitter Spaces, some Facebook Live, but on this time slot, on Wednesdays at 12 noon Central Time, it'll be the Aggie Scouting Report. I am going to be breaking down Aggie football, and we're going to have some help with some guys covering other sports. We're going to talk to Sam Smith today about Aggies baseball, the quick start there. But a little bit about this will be a little different. This is the inaugural show. We wanted to get going today. Next week, I'll be at the Scouting Combine, and then we're going to start every week on March 9th. How do you get us, folks? I mean, if you're listening to this as a podcast, meaning you're not watching us live, that's okay. But you can join us live, watch the show. How do you do it? Very simply. You can go to a few places. You need to bookmark at Maroon Mega Media. That's obviously capital M in Maroon, capital M in Mega, and capital M in Media. You do that, when we go Twitter Live, you're going to be able to watch us there. Or if you're a Facebook guy or gal, go there. You can watch us live there. You can also catch us right now at Landry Football, which is my Twitter handle, Landry Football Facebook, Landry Football YouTube, and you can also catch us on Twitch TV. That's twitch.tv/Chris Landry Football. So plenty of ways for you to watch. And why do you want to watch it live? We think it's good because you can interact with us. You can send us a question in the chat room. Basically, just send us any thoughts, comments, questions in the different forums. We're going to work through some of it. It's not going to be smooth. Technical issues are going to happen. But what is this show going to be about? For those of you don't know, and many of you don't, my name is Chris Landry. I am a longtime NFL scout, college coach, worked at LSU as a scout, as a coach, rather, and then working in the NFL as a scout for 30-plus years, coaching in the NFL. And when I was approached by doing this, I said, well, okay, it's going to be a Texas A&M show. What's the rub? Why am I there? Didn't go to A&M, but I've admired the program. But I was told, as a lot of you Aggies are very accustomed to, you want to do everything first class. And it's one thing I admire about the program. And so I was told that, yeah, we want somebody that has football credentials, coaching and scouting background that can bring a national objective viewpoint on Texas A&M without sacrificing the insiders that are the embeds that live, and die with A&M, and that's what we're going to have. We're going to partner with the guys at 247. I mentioned Sam Smith, but Brian Peroni, Andrew Hattersley, all guys that you are familiar with that cover baseball, basketball, football, recruiting. We're going to have them involved in this show as well as the other shows that we're doing. So I wanted to, kind of give you a little bit of an idea of how we're going to do it, why we're going to do it. No, it's not going to be the typical stuff. You get the typical show that, it's just a, powder puff and, everything is rosy. I'm going to tell you how I see it. And just the respect that I have for the fan base is that we're going to be honest and tell you what we see. This is going to focus a lot on football here all year round. But we'll also get into basketball, and we're not going to maybe get into that today because we've got a lot to cover in baseball and other Aggie sports. And so we're going to have that. Join us in the chat room again at Maroon Mega Media, at Landry Football. If you want to follow Sam Smith, that's at SLMNSAM1. We encourage you to do that. Andrew Hasley, at Andrew, ANDREWHATTS, call him Hat. And then at Peroni 247. Again, show will be here at 12 noon starting on March 9th, but this is kind of our preview show. Hey, if you haven't caught us, we've done a couple of Twitter Spaces shows, and if you haven't had a chance to listen to the interview we had with the Aggie legend, Johnny Holland, I think you'll love that. So check that out. That was a lot of fun. We think you're going to enjoy that. We've got that on tape. one of the things that we are working on too is a website page to house everything, so that if you miss something, you can go back and listen to it. It'll be a lot easier. So we're a work in progress. Um, what inspired me to start this was the fact that in my years of coaching against Texas A&M when I was a coach at LSU, recruiting against A&M when I was a recruiting coordinator at LSU, scouting A&M like I was scouting schools all around the country is, I would say this honestly, and I've said this on national forums, so this is not a Aggie take on an Aggie show. There's something that I can't quite put into words or adequately describe the Aggie spirit. It's a little bit different. I can remember um, getting vitriolic emails, and back when emails just started, when we'd release a player when I was with the Browns or when I was with the Houston Oilers, and if it was a former Aggie. There's nobody that loves their fellow group than Aggies. And I do admire what the programs have become under recent athletic directors, recent coaches. And so I was intrigued by the fact that this is a group that wants to do the best. And so that would inspired me to say, let's put together some platforms. I am not a technical guy, I'm a football guy. So we're going to grow with you and provide this for you, the fan, to give you the access, for you to be able to understand why. I think in today's world, everybody knows what happens. You want to know why it happened. So at least from my standpoint, I'm going to give you the film room breakdown of what happened, why it happened. Um, I grew up in South Louisiana, and after many years away from South Louisiana in my coaching and scouting career, I moved back home to care for my aging parents. And currently, I own my coaching and scouting consulting business that I do work for college programs and NFL teams. I moved back home to Baton Rouge area where my parents, who've since passed on. And so, it gives a perspective maybe from a distance, but that's really closely tied, and it admires this Aggie program. After my playing career, I began my coaching career at my alma mater, LSU, and then, as I said, coached many games at A&M. And then when I moved into the NFL and worked with the likes of Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, I've seen the game and have been in facilities all around the country. Have seen the support base, and again, I think the Aggie tradition is unmatched. So you, the fan, are why we're doing this. It's the interaction that we seek, and we want to take you inside and get you involved and give you some answers that maybe are far different than what it's would normally get. Look, it's not my responsibility to be a fan. You're the fan. I come to this from an objective coaching and scouting perspective, a national overview. Just like I do, and you can find my work over at LandryFootball.com. It is a coaching and scouting and an administrative viewpoint on the college and NFL game. Recruiting to the draft, it involves evaluating players, teams, coaches, schemes at the college and NFL level. That's what I do for you. So I will tell you what I see when I break down the tape and why, and we'll let you be the fan. And so we'll kind of help you, provide you with that. So let's get ready to have a blast. And we're going to, now that you know what it's all about, we can get a few things going today that I'd like to get into. And I'm going to pick up again, since I wanted to get some of this business taken care of out of the way. We're going to kind of start in full force on March 9th when I come back from the combine. But we're going to be speaking to Sam Smith in just a little bit, in about 3 or 4 minutes. And we're going to talk a little bit about the baseball program. But I did want to address, before we do that, a couple of things today, and we'll get as far as I can go, and then we'll leave the rest to a couple of weeks. But I want to address the state of the A&M program, and as regards to where they are, modern day recruiting, NIL, recent scuttlebutt back and forth, and kind of where this is coming from. I'm going to talk a little bit about the scouting combine that I'm going to be at next week, and we're going to talk a little bit about the players that are the Aggie players that are going to be at the Combine. But I did want to address a couple of things. Um, we'll do a position by position scouting report we got over at Landry Football, but I'll go into much more detail. But one of the things I want to get into is kind of the state of the program. And I have admired Jimbo Fisher. As I mentioned, had a long-time relationship with Nick Saban. And I mentioned on one of our Twitter Spaces platforms of a story of how at least first of all, I knew Jimbo Fisher because I remember him as a player, and then he getting his first start into coaching at Auburn and doing a really nice job. But when I was working for Bill Belichick, one of the things that he had us do was to scout not only the players, but really have an idea who are some of the best up and coming coaches are around the country. And when Jimbo was an assistant and offensive coordinator at University of Cincinnati under Rick Minter, he was somebody that I kind of penciled in as somebody that I thought would be really good. And Nick Saban was on the staff at the time, and Nick Saban ended up going to Michigan State. And as you know, if you followed Nick Saban's career, it was when he left Michigan State to go to LSU. It was part of the background that he had done on Jimbo Fisher. He and I had talked about Jimbo, and he had studied, I think they were either playing somebody that was in film exchange against Cincinnati. He admired what Jimbo Fisher was doing. So go back, and my admiration for him has been pretty impressive. And what I see, what he's done throughout his career with Nick, going to Florida State, working for the Bowden family and taking over that program. What I see right now, objectively, is him building a strong foundational program, a strong line of scrimmage foundational program in the mode of what I've seen at Georgia the past few years under Kirby Smart. It's not about a recruiting class, but a culture and recruiting excellence to build a foundation to create a power moving forward. You see, you can talk about winning titles and all of that. The reality is you got to be in it to win it. You can be a flash in the pan, or you can be a consistent power. Georgia was what? They couldn't win a title under Kirby Smart. They could only recruit, right? Well, that changed this year. And they had a couple of close calls. But whether it's Coach Bowden, Coach Osborne, I've lived through many of them that, they can't win the big one, and then they win a couple. If you think about Coach Bowden, you think about Coach Osborne, those two, for example, you kind of think that they won 5 or 6 titles, and they didn't win that many, but they were in it. This program, I think, is on the path to do the same thing, to be in a position. I can't predict if they're going to win a title soon or win one. I just know that they're going to be in the mix. To having the best class historically is great. Keeping the class together, developing it, and recruiting maybe not the best recruiting class of all time every year, or even the best recruiting class every year. But recruiting at a high level, top 5 level, top 3 level like Georgia and Alabama have done, that's the really key. If you can't recruit at that level every year, then you're going to have to upcoach them. Stay on their level. Florida and Auburn are 2 examples of programs with national success over the years and national brands, but they haven't consistently recruited at that high level to be consistently there. I mean, Dan Mullen has had success coaching in the SEC, particularly at a developmental program at Mississippi State. But at Florida, as good as he coached, even beating Georgia just a year ago, the program slipped dramatically. Why? The recruiting wasn't there. So that's the staple. A&M is on that path. Let's see how fast they move and how long they can stay on that path. Jimbo Fisher, as a program builder and as a recruiter, is proven. I thought 2 of his classes at Florida State were as good as any in the country in those given years. Since he's been in College Station, in my opinion, at least how I grade classes relative to how many scholarships you have and the quality of players that you bring in, graded out consistently in the top 5, 6, or 7 nationally in my evaluation, which may not match all the website services, and that's fine. but that's how I've seen them. So it's nothing out of the ordinary for Jimbo Fisher to recruit the top class in the country. It's not a huge leap. It's not like some classes we've seen. Well, we haven't seen many of them. I could say a Hugh Freeze class at Ole Miss ended up 1 year, and that was a precipitous jump. This is not the case here. When you throw in what A&M has to offer in terms of tradition, the school, you could see that this is something that's been building. Oh, does NIL have a lot to do with it in terms of where the future's going? It better, because if you are not involved in organizing your NIL, you're going to be left by the wayside. But I can tell you firsthand that my experience at Texas A&M is not doing anything that any other football power is doing or will do. I think they're doing it a little bit better and more streamlined. I do think when you begin to make positive strides, I think Georgia got a lot of this. Well, they hadn't won since 1980. They haven't done this. They're just recruiting. They just can't. Kirby can't do this. Kirby can't coach. You get a lot of that negativity. And if you're a fan of your program, you're a fan of the Aggies, you're going to get a lot of detractors, just like you would be a detractor of your given rival. Things, people start to take notice in the football business of which I operate in and outside in the media and the fan world. You're not going to stop fans from taking pot shot at you. It's all about competitive success throughout the process. And when you make a loud statement, people get into that. So there are those that are going to attribute any future success at A&M to the NIL. You can't reason with those who don't know the facts. We see that in every walk of life, right? But I can vouch. In fact, I was at the Senior Bowl recently, and I'm learning about NIL. It's not like I can go back and say, 10 years ago when we started NIL, we didn't have it then. But I was at the Senior Bowl, and I was meeting with a group of executives that are specializing in NIL deals. And from what I gathered, Ohio State's probably spending the most money. Texas is spending a bunch. There are a lot of people doing it, and everybody's trying to feel their way out. And I think A&M made, I think, in the top 5 or 6. But I think the biggest thing is how you organize it. NILs have to be done off campus, not associated with the university, but the groups that organize it have to report to compliance. So we don't know everything yet about what they're doing, how they're doing it, but we know some of it. If the rumors about, player X made this, I can tell you, and I have talked to a number of college coaches about this, and this is one thing that probably stoked the ire of one coach, Jimbo Fisher. And I've talked to a few coaches about this from the NFL standpoint. See, in the NFL, let's say you've got your receiver room, and you've got your 2 best receivers are under contract, but your 3rd best receiver who's really good and you really want to keep, he's a free agent. He's going to get more money on the open market because he's a free agent. His contract is up. If you pay that guy more than the top 2, you have just ruined your receiver room. They're going to need more, and all of a sudden it's rising tide raises all ships. It will create an imbalance and a problem in the locker room. And this is one of the things that, while NIL is done off campus, will have to be organized in some way to where you handle your roster. And this is one of the issues and one of the things that on the outside people may joke and have fun with. But if you're in a seat of Jimbo Fisher and you get a phone call from a player that's currently on the team, hey, about this $1 million that each of these recruits are getting, well, what about my son? That'll tick you off real quick because you're having to report that none of that's true. And so a lot of that stuff, but remember, if you get enough people to tell you that today is Christmas on the internet, and you have 100 people or 1,000 people repeat it, everybody will be shopping for Christmas trees and eggnog. I mean, that's the world we live in. So more on that in a second. And I'm going to get into comparing a little bit of this class to maybe a class or two that Jimbo had at Florida State. But I do think that what A&M has done has been very organized. I really admire what they've done in terms of organizing how they're going to utilize NIL. But the whole thing about they're making this money and that money, it's anybody that knows anything about how college football works knows that couldn't possibly be close to being true. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to jump back on some more football topics in a second, but I want to go here and have a little baseball talk with the good friend, Sam Smith, who is obviously a part of the great group at 247, and really appreciate Sam joining us. Sam, thanks for joining us here today. I appreciate you. First of all, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you?
Doing good. We're just getting started here. I followed a little bit of what happened. Take us what happened on the diamond. Obviously, a sweep of Fordham. It's early, but what did we learn about this team through the first weekend of action?
Well, it's really interesting. Before I get into that, I thought it was interesting. Your whole take on Jimbo Fisher and the program concept and everything, it could not be more apropos to actually describing Jim Schlossnagle at A&M. We've had good coaches at A&M for years and years that have had success, but they never could just get over the top. In fact, Rob Childress was, basically won a ton of games here and very successful, had consecutive streak going to the NCAA tournaments and going to the World Series and all that, but he never won it, never did anything. So it reminded me so much of your description of the Floridas and things of that nature. But Jim Schlossnagle is different. He is truly coming in. He's built an elite staff, very similar to what Jimbo Fisher did, but he's also he's going out there and recruiting unlike anything that's ever been seen here at A&M. So the comparisons are so close together, and truly, I believe that Jimbo has actually set up a mold that all the A&M athletic programs are going to start to follow. Is that you've got to be aggressive, you've got to build a phenomenal team, and you've got to outwork your opponent. And they certainly are doing that for the time being. But getting into this weekend, it was really a lot of fun because you just never know. A brand new team. He went out and hired Nate Yetzke, who basically is a pitching coach that, the New York Yankees tried to get him to be their pitching coach. And he wanted to stay in college baseball. And the next thing you know, Schlossnagle's hired him at A&M. So huge coup for Jim Schlossnagle. But, Nate Yetzke walks in. He's got 15 new pitchers. They've got a lot of kids that transferred out when the coaching changes made. Same transfer portal issues that we deal with in football. And so you just really didn't know what you had. And so they came out. Fordham obviously is kind of a mid to upper level A10 team, very competitive. They have the lifetime record for wins in college baseball, but that goes back into the late 1800s. But it's a good program. I wouldn't call it an elite program, especially when you're competing against SEC baseball. But Schlossnagle's team came out, and the pitchers really did exactly what they wanted them to do, threw strikes and got a lot of people out. But we saw some performances that you knew the potential was there, but you just didn't know if they could really take that leap and really make it happen. And so A&M won the first game handily. They really were a little slow coming out of the gates. The front part of the lineup really is still not hitting its full groove, and I'm sure that Coach Schloss will be adjusting that as he needs to. But A&M finally kind of got on fire and blew them out early in the first game there and really kind of coasted. The second game, little of the same. Basically, the pitchers did what they needed to do. They started rotating a lot of these new guys in, and good things were happening. But the interesting thing that I would throw out about A&M baseball is that historically, it was kind of an old school approach. It was pretty easy to guess what the next move was. And in baseball, that is the worst thing in the world to be. And that's what probably frustrated Aggie fans the most about the Rob Childress era. It was that he was a phenomenal pitching coach, but it was very easy to kind of guess what his next move was. He kind of went by the book. Everything was by the book. And Jim Schlossnagle was not like that in any way. He's certainly an old school coach. He demands excellence. He reminds me a lot of Jimbo in that way too. But one thing about him is he's thinking 7 or 8, 9 steps ahead of everybody else. And so there was a situation in the the final game of the series with Fordham where A&M was down by a run. It's 4-3, bottom of the ninth, last at bat for A&M. And Logan Britt came to the plate. And Logan had a double in an inning just recently from that, but he'd been kind of struggling at the plate. Logan's one of those guys that either is phenomenal or he strikes out. And Michael Early, the pitching coach for A&M, really, or excuse me, the hitting coach for A&M, has really been working with him on his approach. Started to make things a lot simpler. Reminds me a lot of development in football. They're developing these athletes, and so here's a kid with amazing talent. Anyway, he's coming to the plate, and a lot of the people after the game were asking Schlossnagle, well, if this happened, would you bunt in this situation? And Schlossnagle didn't just give an answer. He went into an entire explanation of this scenario, that scenario, this scenario, that scenario, whatever. If this happened, this was going to happen. I mean, he basically gave about 9 examples of different things that were going to happen depending on what happened in the game. Well, it turned out Logan Britt caught a fastball and put it over the right center field fence, and Olsen magic occurred in the first week inning in Bluebell Park. So really exciting to kind of see all these pieces start to come together. But it's early. The first series is usually trying to find out what you have, but this is certainly not SEC baseball yet.
With so many arms that you mentioned, get 15 of them. About how long typically? Maybe Coach Schloss is. Maybe I've asked them this or not. About how long do you get a feel for? All right, here's are going to be our key, our number 1, number 2, number 3 starters. Obviously, midweek starters, weekend starters, and then these guys are going to be better fit for middle relief, closers. What typically about how long does that take to kind of figure out who's what?
Well, interesting in baseball, it's an ever-evolving cycle. So they start putting them to work. They get them into game situations. I mean, obviously, fall ball is great. You can play all the scrimmages you want, but until you actually put them under fire, under pressure in an actual real game, you don't really know what you have. And so what I would tell you is that Nate Yeske and Coach Schlossnagle are very clear that they want guys that can throw strikes. So they put them on that hill, and all of a sudden the kid starts to struggle throwing strikes. He's not going to be on the hill very long, and he's certainly not going to be the guy they call when they need him. So that was probably the first thing that he wanted to see. The good news is the starting rotation did a pretty dang good job. We started a freshman pitcher on Sunday. Prager did a good job. I mean, he really probably wasn't perfect. It wasn't on his best, but he threw strikes. And when you throw strikes, A&M's defense committed 1 error in fact, they've only committed 1 error through 4 games now. And that error was actually made by the pitcher, and it was only made because the pitcher forgot how many outs there were and basically kind of panicked. If he'd thrown the ball to first, the game was over. The inning was over. But instead, he panicked and gave up 2 runs and actually made it a ball game. But other than that, defense stepped it up. And so when they're evaluating these pitchers, they want to know that, are you going to throw strikes when I put you in there? If you're going to give up walks, we don't need to give free base pass. And so you come in, you've got quality stuff. That's why I put you on the hill. You throw strikes, I'm going to be able to count on you, and then let the defense, back you up. And so that's exactly what they're doing. And for the most part, A&M pitching did a pretty dang good job for the first 4 games.
The catcher, is it pronounced Clonch, the kid from California? Off to a good start. Seemed like they're pretty impressed with him. A little bit about him and what's his strength. He's good working with pitchers behind the plate, calling the game, or what's the little bit of a scouting report on him?
Well, in college baseball, the catcher is your quarterback. And Troy Clonch was a graduate transfer from Oregon State, where he won a national championship. Has been in the College World Series. The guy has basically, grown up in a very solid program. And after he graduated, he wanted to work on furthering his education. It just so happened that A&M had one of the master's programs that he was interested in. He obviously knew Coach Yeske, who used to coach at Oregon State a while back. And so there was a lot of synergies that actually gave A&M an opportunity to speak to Troy Clonch. Well, he's probably the number 1 addition that I would tell you that A&M added in the offseason. And that's because he's a proven winner. He was the Pac-12 catcher of the year in 2021, but he runs the show out there. And these new pitchers, they're on the mound for the first time, or at least the first time in an Aggie uniform. And they've got a guy in the backstop back there that basically is a proven winner, proven leader, just an outstanding individual. And so we saw all through the weekend, these pitchers were being asked by Coach Yeske to throw certain pitches. every one of them that hit the dirt, Clemons was backing them up. He was stopping those balls and, doing everything you have to do. And so I would say he was the unsung hero for the weekend, but he's going to end up being probably the piece that will allow Coach Schlossnagle to overachieve in 2022 because he's got a proven leader as a backstop back there.
What do you think this team? I know it's early, but kind of preseason. I know the preseason rankings, they do that for baseball as well. What do you see this team kind of stacking as this season progresses within the SEC? It's a tough conference, I know, but kind of top. I mean, what's the ceiling for this team, you think?
Well, what I would tell you in my preview that I did for Gig'em 24/7, I put A&M at 7th in the SEC. Now, understand, in the SEC right now, I believe there's at least 5 national seed teams. And what I mean by that is 5 of the top 12 teams in the country are in the SEC, and that's starting the season. It's probably going to end up being more than that. And so A&M is not there yet. They're certainly not at that point. And the reason they're not is it's brand new staff, a lot of new kids that have transferred in. We had double-digit transfer portals. We got 15 new pitchers. You got all this stuff going on. So no one in their right mind would say that A&M is prepared to make a College World Series run. That being said, there's a lot of talent on this team. And because of that, the sky's the limit. Could they make it to Omaha? Absolutely. They certainly could. But they're going through the SEC gauntlet. And so what I've tried to tell everyone is that, temper the expectations. The team is 4-0. We saw some outstanding performances in the first 4 games. I mean, if Trevor Warner continues at the pace he's on, which I doubt that he can because truly no one ever has, but if he does, he's going to be an All-American and win the Golden Spikes Award as the best player in college baseball. It's that kind of performance that he put on the first week of the season. But that being said, if these kids start to do exactly what they're starting to show, then Schlossnagle has a lot better team than anybody in the national world thought that they would. And with that being said, these guys can make a run. And so we're going to know in the next 6-8 weeks exactly, are these guys up to the task? Are they going to be able to compete? In fact, first weekend of SEC play, we get to go to your old hometown and play the LSU at Alex Box. And I can tell you right now that that's not a fun place to play. And if you've never played in the SEC, it's a heck of a trial by fire. And that's exactly what this team will face. So what I would say to anyone, I'd say all Aggies should be extremely excited. They should be fired up. They should follow these kids and support them. At the same time, let's not expect that all of a sudden they're going to go out and win the national championship. It's going to take a few years for Schlossnagle to stack recruiting teams, just like what Jimbo has done in football. But I can tell you right now, the caliber of the players, the caliber of the staff, is certainly moving in the right direction.
Yeah, you were listening to Sam Smith now, and be sure to give him a follow on Twitter at SLMNSAM1. Does a great job along with the guys at 247, covering a lot of things. Hey, before I get you out of here, let's talk a little bit about some of the other programs that don't, quick mention, that don't get a lot of love. So I know the Aggies golf team is going. Now, I did not realize this. So Gerard Chadwell's wife is Stacy Lewis. I did not know that. I didn't know that. So she's Wopig Tsui, and that must be for some interesting conversation. So she obviously, I knew she was selected as a Solheim captain, but and I'll be honest, I don't know Coach Chadwell, and but I knew of the name. I did not know that they were married. Obviously, the last name issue kind of threw me. So a little bit about the women and the men's golf teams off to a pretty good start.
Well, since we started with that, I'll talk about Jared Chadwell for a second. So Jared's background is he started in the golf world and actually worked with Dave Peltz. And if you're familiar with golf ball, Dave Peltz was the short game guru out of Texas. Actually, Jared learned everything that he knows in golf basically from him, taught for a long time, and then decided he wanted to get into college coaching, went back to his home in Oklahoma and started coaching his local junior college team. He eventually became an assistant coach on the University of Oklahoma team, was hired away from there to start the University of Houston golf program, and has had tremendous success even with that program as young as it is. He was hired this year to replace Andrea Gaston, who left the A&M program, and he immediately came in and started to recruit well and a lot of transfer portal type things. And he's got the number 19 team in the country right now, which is pretty amazing considering where they've been in years past. But the Stacey Lewis, it really is an interesting dynamic because Stacey grew up in Houston. If you know Stacey Lewis's story, though, you got to love Stacey Lewis. She had major back issues growing up. Went to University of Arkansas, was a star. She's obviously a Hall of Fame type of person in the LPGA, won many majors and done amazing things for the United States teams on Solheim Cups and so forth. And so when Jared got an opportunity to come, that was the first thing, obviously, all of us that kind of knew her was, wow, what's this going to be like? Because are you moving to College Station? Well, yes. Stacey Lewis lives in College Station now. And so, yes, she is a loyal, no doubt about it, woo pig suey hog. But at the same time, she loves her husband and these kids on this A&M team. And, she's out there practicing for her next tournament or doing whatever while she's also got these kids, down the way that are wearing maroon and white. And so I know she's been great to them and treated them fantastic and supported Jared in any way. And, another note, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Spirit Invitational, but Spirit Invitational is a international competition that's hosted at the Whispering Pines Club outside of Houston each year. And it's a competition with two men and two women from each country. And Stacey Lewis was the captain this year of the winning team. And her number one player on the men's team was Sam Bennett, the number one player at Texas A&M. And so there's been a lot of connections now with that. But that being said, the teams themselves, the women were in Houston at the Ion tournament that Jared Chadwell actually used to run. They competed well. They finished tied, finished fifth, actually. And Jenny Park finished tied for sixth in the tournament, was the leading Aggie. And so it was a good start to the year for them. The A&M men, though, were headed to Hawaii. They were actually out there to defend their title that they won last year. Sam Bennett was with them for the first time because Sam just had gotten back from the Middle East. He was the number one ranked college golfer in the country through the fall, and that gave him an exemption to play in the professional event over in the desert. And so he just got back, and so the first event was here in Hawaii. They had some tough times over there. I will tell you, the back nine just ate them alive. In fact, I still want to talk to the team and understand what's going on the 18th hole because I think A&M was something like 17 over par on one hole. And so that hole did not fit well. And so they ended up rallying. Sam shot 64 the final day and ended up finishing second overall. So all in all, good start for the team. A&M men are ranked 16th in the country and A&M women are 19th as we begin the spring season.
And we appreciate that. Great stuff there for Sam. Sam, we'll let you run. We know you got a busy day. Can't thank you enough for joining us and really excited about the partnership. And we'll be doing this on a regular basis here and certainly on Spaces. As we mentioned, a lot of stuff that we're working on for the great Aggie fan base. So appreciate you. Have a great day.
Chris, my pleasure. Thanks for what you're doing for us, man.
Thank you. All right, appreciate Sam Smith. And again, give him a follow there over on Twitter at SLMNSAM1. And you've got it there for those listening, the great folks at 247. So appreciate it. I want to get back into some football discussions. And I kind of left off talking about, Jimbo Fisher in recruiting and a lot of the talk about, well, where's this recruiting class coming from? And always a way to look at it and say, how does this really compare? It didn't come out of nowhere. I mentioned, I'm going to go back to the 2011 recruiting class at Florida State. I think some people ranked it in the rankings like second. I thought it was as good a class as anybody in the country that year, quite frankly. The 2012 class was a top 5 class. I thought was as good as anybody in the country. That's the one that had Jameis Winston, and of course he won the Heisman in 13. That's at Florida State, where we know that Jimbo left Florida State for a reason. The facilities and the fundraising efforts were not even a fraction of what you can get done at A&M, and it was the whole reason that that you were able to lure him to Scott Woodward was able to lure him to College Station. So you're able to do that at Florida State, and Bobby Bowden had really good classes, but Jimbo really followed that up. Now, if you look at one of the things that to make a comparison to that class to this class. The one thing that's a little different in today's world, and we'll get to this in a second, is the transfer portal wasn't in play like it is now. But Jimbo's not had an elite quarterback since Winston. And I think for A&M to take that next step is to get that quarterback and develop. Now, I think they've got him. I think potentially there, if you look at it, they haven't had, I'm not a big believer in the 5-star, 4-star, but an elite caliber guy since Kyler Murray came out. And, he obviously transferred pretty quickly. Connor Wegman is that type of talent. I think Haynes King has that type of talent. Last year, you didn't have a lot of depth. And one thing I do know about studying Jimbo Fisher with quarterbacks is that whatever they've got in their capabilities, Jimbo will squeeze as much out of them as you can. I've seen it with guys, not to diminish anybody. There have been a lot of guys at Florida State that produced, that went high in the draft, not because of natural ability, but because of production under Jimbo. And I think in the SEC, to get that type of quarterback that could take them to that next step is going to be key. And I think they've got that guy, a couple of guys. Wegman has a big arm, a quick release, can make plays in and out of the pocket. And so I think they may have that type of class this year. And now, the thing that I see in this class that's a little different is the defensive line in the secondary class at A&M surpasses Florida State's 11 and 12 class combined. So in the talent acquisition department, Texas A&M is beginning to rival that of Georgia and Alabama now, and I think LSU's been in that category at times, but not as consistent. Now's the time to develop the team and to play with the mindset that all championship programs have. Remember that we're entering a new age, the transfer portal age. How many players in this program is going to stay throughout or leave for what they see or as greener pastures? At Alabama, for example, one of the things that has made them successful is not just who they recruit, but who they keep. If you look at the players that enter the portal, the transfer portal, they're all guys that either they missed in recruiting or they haven't developed. Maybe they haven't bought into the program quite as much. And I can tell you what happens over there in Tuscaloosa. They push guys into the portal so they can use their scholarships to get another bite at the apple for another player. So the Aggies have landed an elite class. That's great. That's a good selling point. It's a good building point. But developing them accordingly. Can they keep them motivated, team-oriented goals, continue to recruit on a similar level each year? That's going to be key. Again, not many I've seen develop as good at the quarterback position than Jimbo Fisher. In fact, to the point where sometimes I think guys don't perform as well at the NFL level. The E.J. Manuels, the Christian Ponder type guys that were overdrafted mainly due to the production and the coaching that Jimbo got out of them at the college level. Jameis Winston hadn't been the same since he's left Jimbo. So that's kind of how I see it. I do want to mention that going to the Combine this weekend, and you've got a number of Aggies that are going to be there. So I want to go through a little bit of some scouting notes on each of the players from A&M that are going to be at the Combine, that based on film grade. Now, you can get a more detailed individual and team scouting reports on these players at LandryFootball.com. That's what we do there. But we're going to go through a few of them and remind you a little bit about who's there and a little bit of what the film speaks to me on what these guys are. Kenyon Green, a former 5-star recruit out of the state of Texas, immediate starter for the Aggies. He started more than 35, I believe, in his 3-year career. Experienced guy. He's played multiple positions. If you're not going to be an elite left tackle, you better play multiple positions. He's played every position but center. He's got natural, functional strength, and I think could become a real road grader at the next level in the run game. As a pass protector, he has good quickness to mirror and slide, and I think he can develop. Versatile guy, He's amassed a ton of experience, can play both guard positions, can play right tackle in the pinch. It reminds me a lot of Eldon Jenkins, who's with the Packers. A lot of talk about DeMarvin Leal. Is he dropped? Is he, folks? Let me warn you. I don't like to throw cold water on people who do this, but this talk about, well, he's slipping, but he was ranked, Chris, in the top 10. Those are not rankings by NFL teams. Okay. People projecting who's going to be mock draft this, top 10 this, whatever, in August, September, October, December is all guessing. They're not evaluators of talent, and teams that I work for, I have been in a draft room every year since 1982. The draft boards are not set. You can't be moving up or down a draft board that hadn't been set. So what you're getting is the most recent conversation from people that are just talking amateur opinions about what the guys are. So what is DeMarvin Leal? It's a former 5-star prospect. Was one of the first biggest recruits that Jimbo had. And he's been a pillar of a much improved defensive line that we know that they've built upon this recruiting class. He's a true junior. He started all 3 years for the Aggies. He has got rare size. I think athleticism for his size, his functional strength makes him a dominant and versatile defensive lineman. In A&M scheme, he lines up in every alignment and is impactful at every position he asks him to play. He has the power to collapse the pocket for the interior and the speed to be an effective enough edge rusher. In the NFL, it's a different game. Okay, he's going to be utilized as an interior defensive lineman who can overwhelm offensive linemen with his ability to convert speed to power. He's got really good athleticism to become dominant. I see him as a 3 technique where he can use his combination of size and athleticism there. So an attacking 4-3-3 technique, he could play 3-4 as an end. Look, I don't want to put the label on him that he's going to be the next Chris Jones, because Chris Jones coming out of Mississippi State was a beast in his own right, and he's been a beast for the Kansas City Chiefs. But he's got that type of style. For those that will kind of say, well, if you're ranking him and just throwing out, oh, he's a top 10 pick, and then he doesn't go in the top 10, then you think, well, something's wrong. What's happened? What did he do? Did he hit somebody? Did he do something? No. There are going to be 32 different looking draft boards out there. And with rare exceptions, grades are going to vary according to team in terms of fit. I think Leal's going to be somewhere in the grade range, at least for me, and you can understand the grades a little bit better with Landry football. 6'4" is a possible starter pretty early. That could go in, that would probably put him in the same grade category that could go anywhere from pick 20 to pick 40. Now, it's probably going to be closer to 20 because of the position he plays, and we'll see where I end up grading him and stacking him. But there are going to be a number of players. There probably be, typically maybe at multiple positions, every position, as many as 35, 40 players with 6'4" grades. So how many of them are going to be defensive tackles? To be determined. I'm not done yet. But he's going to be in that mix. So don't get alarmed about, hey, something's wrong or what have you. There are things that we're going to be looking at the combine in putting them on the board and in workouts that's going to help us get a feel for it. But the guy's going to play, and he's going to be a really good one, I think. Isaiah Spiller, north-south runner, like his size, like his power, good vision as a runner. He's patient attacking the hole. He flashes good bursts through the hole. I like his jump cut. He can make defenders miss. Runs with good power, good contact balance. It's a little bit of a long strider who can cover ground when he gets going downhill. Like his vision, as I mentioned, his instincts. As a receiver, used mostly on quick outs, wheel routes, screens. I think he's got natural hands. He can track the ball with ease, but, he can work on his pass blocking. But he's got to become a little bit more proficient in the passing game, and I think he can be a starting 3-down back. I think he's got some of the traits that I saw in Joe Mixon coming out of Oklahoma. If he can be close to what Joe Mixon has been for the Bengals, it'll be great. Jalen Wiedemeyer, a favorite there, playmaking tight end. Certainly has the game to transition to the next level. Immediate success at A&M. Started as a true freshman All-American. Exactly what you want in the detached wide position in today's NFL. Outstanding size, good athleticism, can win as a receiving tight end. Huge frame, large catch radius, good body control, natural hands to catch away from frame, catch it cleanly. He's a build-to-speed runner, not that explosive burst, but he can cover ground with his long stride. Good route runner. Well coached there. Jimbo and his schemes always uses the tight ends very effectively. That's going to be a good selling point always in recruiting. And he's very good after the catch. With quickness, changes direction, shows good power when breaking tackles. In the run game, I think he can get a little bit stronger. Doesn't get great movement at the point of attack, but he's a stick and stay type of guy. So like him a lot. I think he can be a Jermaine Gresham type of player. Who's had a really good career in the league. Michael Clemons is another guy that I'm intrigued by. He's obviously a guy that transferred to A&M from Cisco Junior College. He's played on the edge. Started the last 2 seasons on the edge. Most productive season I thought was last year. He plays in a 2 and 3 point stance, which is really important. And I think in some of the zone drop stuff that he may be asked to do at the next level from a 2-point stance, shows good burst out of his stance. And he can really get by offensive linemen at the SEC level. I like his length. It's really good length to play against the run that are directed his way. Good athlete. Can stand further development, flash the potential to be a productive edge rusher. Can set the edge. I see him as a 4-3 end, kind of a DJ Wanham type of player. If you don't know him, he's with the Vikings, and I think can be a good rotational player, particularly early. Leon O'Neal is a guy I want to talk a little bit about. Former 4-star prospect from the Houston area, as you guys know, highly touted, was a key contributor. Played a lot of snaps and played a lot of good football for A&M. A bit of an enforcer. Not a bit of an enforcer. He's definitely an enforcer. Big-time hitter. Has had some penalties, and, he'll talk it up a little bit, and he kind of creates an identity and an attitude for that defense. He lines up at both free and strong safety. I think he's best near the line of scrimmage personally at the next level. When he's close to the line of scrimmage, very effective run defender. Can seek contact very well. In pass coverage, he can roam the field. When he's free of responsibilities, get his eyes on the quarterback, and may not be ideally quick enough to make a play on the ball, maybe a little bit late, but when he's in a position to make a play, he'll jar the ball loose. On the next level, I think he's got all the traits to be a key special teams player, which is going to be the key for him to make a team. And as he continues to develop his coverage skills, I think he's an in-the-box safety whose primary responsibility is going to be able to play the run, but I think in a zone system he could be effective covering short intermediate areas. Tyree Johnson, another edge guy, former 3-star prospect from, if you remember, from the D.C. area, redshirt defensive lineman, versatile edge defender, very productive player. I think he's going to have to focus on developing his pass rush repertoire. I think he's going to be an early rotational guy. He's got a knack for getting to the quarterback. And while he doesn't have elite traits like speed or length, he's a guy that's got some upside. And I think can start as an edge player. I think ideally he's a 3-4 outside backer. That's a stand-up guy that can be most effective. Aaron Hansford going to be there. 6-year senior linebacker, came to A&M as a receiver and kind of grew into athletic guy, moved him over there. He redshirted as a freshman. Saw a little receiver action. Going into his junior year, made the transition from receiver to linebacker. He continued to develop his skills as a linebacker, and I thought he did a really good job, very physical, be a effective C-gap to C-gap type player. Outside of the box, I think there's limited athleticism, could be a mismatch against running backs and man coverage, but I think can be good in short area coverage situations. I think he's a first and second down inside backer in a 3-4 scheme, and I think is going to have to really earn his stripes on special teams, which many guys have to. Jaden Peavy, um, is a really good inside tackler, strong punch, can bring his feet, use his hands to shed blocks and make plays in the hole or outside the box, like his lower body strength to anchor inside. His strength gives an edge on to twist inside, and does a really good job with some of their stunt games. Plays with leverage at the point of attack, keeps his eyes in the backfield, tall, solid frame, good length. I think he's more limited to one gap systems as I project him. Lacks the speed to turn a corner consistently. Not great athletic ability or straight line speed. Tight in the hips, not a natural bender, but really good player nonetheless with a good motor. And I think he can be a down the line guy. So those are some of the guys. What are we looking for at the combine? This is film work. Folks, the combine doesn't tell you how good a football player a person is. What is probably misunderstood about the combine? When I was director of the combine, it was run a little differently. And I'm not saying was better than it is now. It's just different. When I was running it, it was strictly business. We didn't have media. We didn't have TV or anybody in there. It's a job interview. Now it's a little bit more dog and pony show. It's a little bit more doing a bunch of media interviews, and it's on TV. And that's great for the promotion of the league, and I'm glad fans get to see it. It makes it a little bit more difficult to do your work as a scout. That's my problem, not yours, but that's just a thought. What are we looking for at the combine? First of all, there's a big misconception about what the combine has done. 95% of what the combine is medical physicals. Prior to having the combine in one location, imagine all the players having to go to all the teams to get a medical physical. It was a problem. And one of the guys, you may remember the name Nolan Cromwell. He was a quarterback at Kansas. He converted safety, played for the Rams for years. Great player. But he had some medical issues, and some of us saw him one time. He made the trek for like 8 teams, and everywhere he was going, he was bringing these big old x-ray things with him, and we think, we got to figure out a better way to do this. So we started to have some sub-combines where we put them in regions. Then we decided to go in one location, take all the medical people, and bring all the top players. Have all the pre-exam physicals, all the MRIs and everything, and everybody, we take that information, and then everybody had it. And like any medical information, each team doctor would then put their own grade on a player's medical, and that's how we began to do it. And, of course, we started the combine. We did it one year in Tampa. We did it one year in Phoenix. We did it one year in New Orleans. And actually a couple of years. And then we moved it to Indianapolis. Long story there. I'll get into it another time, maybe even on March 9th when I return. But what we're looking for is, the medicals. If we do nothing but get the medicals, that is worth its weight in gold and worth the money bringing them in there. But once we brought them in there, we said, we weighed and measured them. That was part of the medicals. Well, let's run them. Let's get some times on. Let's vertical jump them. Let's broad jump them. Let's do this. Then we just, we'll keep them a little longer. We'll put them through a positional workout. We'll do a Cybex test, which measures a lot of the strength of ligaments. And let's do flexibility tests. And let's do Wonderlic Tests, which is a form of an intelligence test, and other tests. So we did a lot of different things. And then when I was running it, we used to give guys a lot of time with a lot of these players to put them on the board and really get to know them. Now, you get 15 minutes with them. You can't do a whole lot. But one of the things we try to get to know these guys. get to put them on the board, see what they know about football, not just see how smart they are, but how much they like football. I've never had a player, when I asked them, I've never asked a player if they like football. What are they going to tell you? No, coach, I don't. Of course they're going to say that. What we want to do is we want to gauge a little bit of their competitiveness. We know how they've been coached. We know what they've been coached. We want to see how much they know, how much they return, how much they retain, how much they um, absorb football. And then obviously the workouts and the drills help us determine some other things. So if a guy is really athletic in the workout, but the athleticism doesn't match the tape, that's a question mark, and it's not a hey, it's definitely a negative. It's a trigger to go back and look at more tape. Why is that? Because normally when that happens, it's a what we call a maybe a lack of confidence or lack of understanding on the field because the workout is simple and it's a little bit more fluid. That tells you what a guy's athletic traits and capabilities are. But when you combine it with the tape, that gives you an idea of what they have been, but then what the potential could be. So there are a lot of things we uncover. Unfortunately, a lot of what they show on TV is the 40 and this guy's going to move up and this and a lot of that stuff is really overplayed. It is valuable. If it wasn't valuable, it wasn't important, we wouldn't do it. But it's like putting every player is like a puzzle. It's putting a piece of a puzzle together to evaluate a player. And without it, you're missing a piece of the puzzle. But it's maybe 10% of the overall evaluation of the player. So we're going to get into that when we come back from the combine. So that's kind of a look. Look, there's some other things that we're going to get into a little bit real quick before we go. We had a couple of questions that you've sent in asking about a couple of the coaching hires that Coach Fisher made this offseason. And we'll get into that a little bit more when I come back. But Steve Addazio and obviously DJ Durkin have been at it. DJ Durkin has been a very successful coach. Obviously, people remember a lot of the controversy at Maryland. For people who don't know, and we'll point to that, there was an independent investigation done. There was no fault of it was a tragic situation that happened at Maryland, but it was an issue to the fault of maybe how they did things administratively and maybe from a medical side. Um, and it was something I know that a lot of people threw on Coach Durkin, I think unfairly. Great guy. No one cares about his players more than he, and is an outstanding coach. Did a really good job there. He's done a really good job everywhere he has been. Most recently, he did a tremendous job at Ole Miss with a offensive system on the other side that's fast paced, where you're having to play good situational football when you're on the field a whole bunch of snaps with less personnel than you're going to have at Texas A&M. So for him, it's like he's walked into a pantry full of groceries with, he's got a lot of things he can pull off the shelves. So really, really good hire there with a guy that's been a head coach, that the head coach can, get some feedback from somebody that's been a good coordinator, but has also been a head coach. Really important. Of course, Darryl Dickey's been a head coach too. And Steve Addazio, the newest addition on the offensive line, coaching the offensive line, a very well-respected offensive line coach, a really good teacher, a tough taskmaster, love his players. Guys play hard, play with good technique, play well together. Um, if you look at everywhere he's coached, the offensive lines have been very good. Um, he's a big part of a lot of what they taught in developing over at Boston College. Obviously, a short stint at Colorado State. I think personally, Coach Fisher did an outstanding job plucking two guys. Coaching searches are a lot of what I do in my consulting business as well, assistants and head coaching. I think Coach Fisher did a phenomenal job getting two guys that not only been experienced as head coaches, but very good at what they do. And remember, don't judge how a guy did as a head coach and say that's how he's going to be as an offensive line coach or a defensive coordinator. They're different disciplines. There's a lot of transferable skills that are going to allow someone to be successful. But going from one spot to another doesn't guarantee the same result positively or negatively. So I think um, that was something that was that people wanted me to address here, and so hopefully we've been able to do that there. We kind of covered some of the basic things again, just kind of a little bit of what we're going to do. Um, we broke down obviously the guys at the combine. When I come back on March 9th, and again we wanted to give you a little overview of what this show is going to be about. We're not going to be here next week, but on the 9th, we'll be back, pick it up from there. We invite you to join us. Look, you are free to join us in the chat room with any questions. And the way you do that, how do you do that? Well, how do you want to listen? There are a couple of things. If you're listening to this in a podcast form, then the show's already taken place and you're listening to it, so you can't join us live because it's already done. That's okay. You can go, for example, to Twitter. And this is the best way to do it. Go to @Maroon Mega Media and send a question and say, hey, we have Miss K that monitors that, and put a hey, question for Chris next show. Boom. We'll pull it off and I'll get it and I'll address it next week. That's one way to do it if you're listening. So you can do that. If that doesn't work, can you do the email stuff? Go to LandryFootball.com. You'll see at the top it says contact Chris. Send an email, or Chris@LandryFootball.com. Boom, send an email. I'll pull it off and we'll address it there. But if you are so inclined and you have time on your lunch hour, and we'll do this 12 noon Eastern, join us live. How do you do that? You can do it by, again, watching us live at Maroon Mega Media on Twitter Live. You can send a question there, and we'll get it, and we'll address it. We'll get a notification. We'll address it on the air. I'll do it in the mailbag segment. This is when I would do a mailbag segment. We just answered the question about DJ and Steve Adazio. But this is where I would answer it at the end of the show. So we'll have a mailbag segment. So you can answer, send it through if you're listening to us on Facebook, you're listening to us on Twitter, you're listening to us on YouTube, you can send it there. It'll come up in the chat room, and we'll address it to you there. And very simple. It's a good way to get involved. So don't be shy. We're doing this for you. We want your feedback. We want to cover the things that you want to cover. I can get into the minutia of football maybe a little bit too much at times, so I want to make this fun, entertaining, get you involved. Obviously, we're doing this now because we want to build a lot of momentum. I give you an idea what I'm going to do. I'm going to eventually take position by position this Aggie team, and we'll go quarterbacks one week, running back, and we'll break down talking about all the players. We'll get you ready for spring practice. That's right around the corner. And we'll keep you up to date on recruiting all along. We'll get a basketball update, baseball updates, recruiting updates all the time. We'll be doing that. And then obviously as we build towards the football season, you pretty much know what that's going to be like. So it's an opportunity for you to join us. We're giving you that forum. There'll be things that I'm going to be prepared to talk about. I'm going to break it down for you. If it's something that I said that's as clear as mud, let me know. I will. My aim is to serve you with this. So we are really excited about what we're doing here at Maroon Mega Media. Again, follow us there. We are working on a website. We're part of a group that's going to be exclusive. You're going to have the type of access that's going to give you things that, quite frankly, you can't get anywhere else. It's, as I said earlier, one of the reasons I got involved, and I think one of the reasons that they tapped me was, okay, we can give a coaching and scouting perspective. I can for what's really going on. It's okay to moan and groan and gripe about coaches or whatever, but let me explain why certain things happen. And sometimes the fault may be at a different place than what you're thinking. That's okay. We're going to give you that perspective. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So check us out. Again, appreciate you joining us. We may go about, this show will go for typically 45 minutes, an hour. I've gone a little bit more today because a lot of housekeeping and want to get to that. So I appreciate the patience getting through that. I figured it would be a good way to let everybody know who we are, who I am. You may not know me. I know you know the guys at 247. So follow Sam, follow Andrew, follow Brian. You can check those guys out at 247. They'll be a big part of what we do. So join us in 2 weeks. Same time, same channels. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, at Maroon Mega Media. And we'll give you Miss Kay will give you an update on all the stuff that's coming on. If you missed it, you want to hear it again, we're going to have that for you as well. So with that, we are really happy that you joined us. We are really appreciative of what you've been able to do. And we certainly hope that you enjoy the weekend. Talk to you next week, everybody.